The first signs of the human arrival came as vibrations through the dense atmosphere, a deep thrumming that disturbed the swamp gases and sent ripples across the stagnant pools surrounding our forward base. Our long-range sensors had detected their ships 3 days earlier, but we had remained confident. After all, this was our world, our environment. The humans were sending a mere 600 warriors to face our 15,000 elite fighters. Their hubris would be their undoing. I stand at my post along the eastern perimeter, primary tentacles firmly gripping my shock spear, secondary tentacles checking the power reserves on my bioarmor. Around me, my clutch mates prepare for battle, their green-tinged skin glistening with natural oils that help us breathe through both lungs and skin in our planet's thick, moisture-laden air. "They're coming," Ertl says beside me, his sensory stalks extending fully to taste the air. I can smell their machines. I can smell them too. The acrid tang of heated metal, the strange chemical scents of their fuel. Unfamiliar, foreign, unwelcome. The human dropships pierce through the low-hanging fog banks, their hulls already beating with condensation from our atmosphere. Our world's natural humidity sits at near saturation levels, perfect for Nudora biology, but devastating to non-seal technology. Already I can see their vessels struggling, navigation lights flickering as moisture infiltrates their systems. "Look how few they are," whispers Ertl, his voice bubbling with amusement. "Their commanders must be suicidal. 6 vessels in total, each likely carrying around 100 of their warriors. 600 humans against our force of over 15,000 elite marsh fighters." Battalion Commander Gerg moves through our ranks, his commanding presence leaving ripples of excitement in his wake. "Remember your training," he gurgles in our native tongue. The humans rely on their technology. Without it, they are soft, vulnerable creatures. Our world will defeat them before we even engage. He's right. Our scientists studied the human equipment during our earlier skirmishes at the colony outposts. Their advanced weapons, plasma rifles, rail accelerators, sonic disruptors, all require precise electrical connections vulnerable to moisture infiltration. Our world's natural environment is perhaps our greatest weapon. The dropships land in the clearing we allowed them to detect, a false safe zone surrounded by hidden battalions. Hatches open, and the humans emerge in their bulky exoskeletons, forming defensive perimeters around their vessels. Their movements are precise, coordinated. I note with satisfaction that many are already touching controls on their weapons and shaking them in obvious frustration. "Their weapons are failing," announces Gerg, his voice carrying across our communication network. "Prepare to advance on my signal." Through my magnification lenses, I observe the humans testing their equipment. Nothing happens. Some remove panels from their rifles, exposing the internal components to even more moisture. Others bang their weapons against their armored legs, as if brute force could overcome our world's atmosphere. The satisfying sounds of electrical failures, pops, crackles, and hisses reach us even at this distance. "Attack formation," bellows Gerg, his battle cry echoed by thousands of throats. "The glory of first blood awaits." We surge forward as one, emerging from the swamp vegetation that had concealed our positions. The first wave, 5,000 warriors, moves toward the human position with perfect synchronization. Behind them, the second wave readies specialized weapons. The third wave, including my clutch, prepares to exploit any breaches in the human defenses. The humans should be panicking now. They should be retreating to their useless ships. They should be calling for evacuation. They do none of these things. Instead, they rush back into their vessels and emerge carrying objects, pieces of equipment, furniture, components of their own ships. "What in the name of the Deep Ones?" mutters Ertl beside me. One human, larger than the others and bearing rank markings on its armor, charges directly toward our front line wielding what appears to be some kind of basin ripped from their ship's interior. A washing fixture? A water container? Whatever it is, it connects with tremendous force against the head of First Strike champion Vogue. The sickening crunch of his cranial shell giving way silences our battle cries momentarily. Our first wave hesitates just for a moment, but that hesitation is enough. The humans explode into action, moving with a speed that belies their bulky appearance. They've organized into smaller units, each seemingly assigned a different area to defend. Their tactics make no sense at first, until I realize they're creating overlapping zones of defense, using their small numbers with brutal efficiency. "Continue the advance," Gurg commands, his voice steady despite the unexpected development. "Overwhelm them with numbers." Our warriors press forward, but the humans have already established defensive positions using parts of their ships as makeshift barriers. A group of them has ripped out internal wall panels and braced them against each other, creating shields behind which they take cover. Others have dismantled what appear to be sleeping platforms, using the metal supports as spears and clubs. The second wave joins the first, adding momentum to our assault. The sound of battle intensifies, the wet thunk of weapons striking flesh, the high-pitched keen of wounded Nudura, the strange barking sounds humans make when communicating under stress. My clutch receives the order to advance. We move forward, 16 warriors bound by birth and training, our movements synchronized through years of combat drills. As we near the battlefield, the true scope of the situation becomes clear. The humans are not just defending, they are counterattacking with savage efficiency. "Split and surround Squad 3, I call to my clutch mates, identifying a group of humans that appears to be flanking one of our forward positions. We move to intercept, using the boggy terrain to our advantage. The humans spot us but continue their advance. Their leader, a smaller specimen with facial markings, gestures toward us with what appears to be a piece of plumbing equipment. "Engage with ranged weapons first," I command, and my clutch mates unleash a volley of biotoxic darts from their secondary appendages. The darts strike true, but the human armor deflects most of them. Those that find gaps in the armor seem to cause pain, but not the paralysis we expected. The humans are either resistant to our toxins, or their medical countermeasures are functioning despite the humidity. They close the distance with alarming speed. The leader swings the plumbing fixture, a length of metal pipe with a valve still attached, directly at my head. I dodge, but just barely. The force of the swing creates a vacuum in the damp air that I can feel against my sensory stalks. "Surround and immobilize," I call, but the humans have already broken through our formation. A metal rod slams into my left sensory stalk, sending me reeling backward. Pain explodes through my neural network. Through the haze, I see a human wielding what looks like part of their ventilation system, swinging it with frightening precision. Two of my clutch mates fall before I can regain my equilibrium. "Keep formation," someone shouts, but our lines are already breaking. All around me, humans have transformed into whirlwinds of improvised violence. They've ripped apart their own ships, turning everything into weapons. Plumbing fixtures become maces, structural supports become spears, seating units become shields and bludgeons. A group of 3 humans has converted what appears to be a food preparation station into a barricade. Behind it, they've positioned a contraption made from what I recognize as parts of their ship's waste disposal system. As our warriors approach, they activate this makeshift weapon, which launches porcelain fragments at devastating velocities. The shards tear through the natural armor of 6 warriors before anyone can react. "Fall back and regroup," calls Subcommander Blizzcake over the communication network. "Adjust formation to counter their improvised weapons." But how do you counter weapons you've never anticipated? How do you train for an enemy that turns everything, absolutely everything, into a means of dealing death? From my position, I can see a squad of humans has fortified a position using their ship's hull plating. They've created a makeshift fortress and are systematically decimating any Nudora who approach. Their coordination is flawless, their improvisation terrifying. One human stands atop their barricade wielding 2 objects that appear to be simply the cushions from their command chairs. Somehow they are using these soft objects to deflect our warriors' shock spears, redirecting the energy back toward the attackers. How are they doing this? Yertle gasps beside me, green blood oozing from a wound on his primary tentacle. They're using parts of their own ships as weapons. 3 of my clutchmates converge on a lone human who has somehow detached himself from their main group. The human, smaller than average with markings on its face, notices the approach and does something incomprehensible. It kneels down, scoops up a handful of our sacred marsh mud and flings it directly into my brother's breathing slits. While they choke and sputter, the human attacks with a piece of metal plating torn from their ship's hull. The movements are economical, practiced, lethal. 2 of my clutchmates fall before they can clear their breathing passages. I try to process what I'm seeing. We outnumber them 25-1, yet they move like creatures born to combat, turning everything around them into extensions of their killing will. Near one of the drop ships, a particularly disturbing group of humans charges through our ranks wielding what appears to be their waste elimination fixtures, large ceramic basins that serve as both shields and bludgeoning weapons. The psychological impact of being attacked with such implements sends several warriors retreating in confusion. Who would use waste disposal units as weapons? What kind of mind conceives of such tactics? "Regroup at the secondary position," comes the command from somewhere behind me. As I begin to withdraw, I witness something that will haunt my nightmares for cycles to come. A team of humans has fashioned a projectile launcher from what appears to be their atmospheric control system. They are loading it with metal components, screws, bolts, fragments of their own technology, and firing them at our troops. The makeshift ammunition tears through our natural armor with horrifying efficiency. I retreat with what remains of my clutch 7 warriors out of 16 to the designated rally point. All around us, similar scenes are playing out. Our superior numbers mean nothing against their adaptability. Our coordinated attacks break against their fluid defenses. Our specialized weapons find no purchase against enemies who seem to thrive in chaos. Commander Gurg attempts to reorganize our forces, dividing us into smaller, more mobile units to counter the human tactics. But each time we adjust, the humans adjust faster. When we spread out to minimize casualties from their improvised projectile weapons, they switch to close-quarters combat with devastating efficiency. When we concentrate our forces to overwhelm their positions, they deploy makeshift explosive devices, cobbled together from their ship's fuel systems. Hours pass in a blur of violence and confusion. Our numerical advantage means nothing against their adaptability. The humans never break formation, never stop communicating, never show fear. They fight as units, protecting each other and moving like a single organism with hundreds of deadly appendages. A human with red markings on its armor orchestrates a particularly devastating attack on our eastern flank. They've somehow repurposed their ship's cooling system into a weapon that launches superheated steam. 300 warriors fall in minutes, their guild chambers scalded beyond function. In another sector, humans have created a network of tripwires using the internal wiring from their vessels. As our warriors advance, they trigger these traps which activate salvaged electrical components. The resulting discharges aren't lethal but cause muscle spasms that leave the victims vulnerable to follow-up attacks with improvised clubs and spears. The most effective human unit appears to be centered around a warrior of impressive size, who wields what I now recognize as a kitchen sink, a water basin from their food preparation area. This human has attached the sink to a length of pipe, creating a weapon with both bludgeoning and hooking capabilities. They use it to devastating effect, alternately crushing cranial shells and yanking warriors off their feet. When the command to retreat finally comes, I realize with horror that thousands of our warriors lie dead or incapacitated in the mud. The humans have constructed defensive perimeters using our own dead as barriers. They have suffered losses, yes, but nothing compared to ours. As we withdraw, the human commander still holding that infamous sink fixture calls out through a translator unit that somehow still functions despite the humidity. "There's no such thing as an unarmed Marine. Remember that the next time you think about starting a war with humanity." I limp away from the battlefield, my damaged sensory stalk throbbing with pain. The taste of defeat is bitter in my mouth gills. How could we have been so wrong? How could we have so dramatically underestimated these creatures? That night, as our medical units tend to the wounded and count our losses, the reports come in. Over 7,000 dead, 3,000 injured, thousands more missing or unaccounted for. The humans have established a perimeter around their landing zone and show no signs of withdrawing. In the command tent, I hear Gerg questioning our intelligence officers. How could we not know about this capability? How could our intelligence miss something so fundamental? The senior intelligence officer, his skin pale from exhaustion and stress, has no satisfactory answer. All our observations indicated a species heavily dependent on technology. Their historical records show technological evolution as their primary survival strategy. Without their tools, they should have been less. Less! Gerg's voice rises in anger. They killed half our force using pieces of their own ships. They turned plumbing fixtures into weapons of war. What part of that suggests less? No one has an answer. The silence stretches, broken only by the sound of distant explosions as the humans consolidate their position. I find myself assigned to a recovery team, tasked with retrieving valuable equipment from the fallen. As we cautiously approach the battlefield under cover of darkness, I see the human defenses have evolved. They've cannibalized more of their ships, creating a fortified compound illuminated by repurposed lighting systems. The most terrifying realization haunts me as we gather our dead. We had disabled their weapons, their technology, everything that should have made them formidable. Our world's natural environment had rendered their advanced weaponry useless, and they had simply found new weapons. What would they have done if they'd been truly prepared? What would have happened if our world's atmosphere hadn't disabled their technology? As darkness falls over our shattered base, the whispers begin among the survivors. The humans don't need weapons. They simply are weapons. For the first time in my life as a warrior of the Nudora, I feel true fear, not just for this battle, but for our species' future. We had thought ourselves the superior warriors, the natural conquerors. We had believed our adaptations to harsh environments made us uniquely suited for combat across diverse worlds. But we had never encountered creatures like the humans, beings who don't adapt to their environment but instead force their environment to adapt to them. Beings who see weapons in everything around them. Beings who fight not just with their limbs but with their minds, constantly innovating, improvising, overcoming. At dawn, our long-range sensors detect more human ships entering our atmosphere. Reinforcement. This time, I suspect they'll bring waterproofed weapons and kitchen sinks. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a like, subscribe. If you'd like to see more stories like this, my channel puts out a wide variety of science fiction stories. I hope to see you in the next one.